Guess who's back, 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 back again? This video was made in association with KnifeInformer.com. Head on over to Knife Informer for all of your blade-related needs, including reviews, comparisons, stats, and more. What is up, everybody, and welcome. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at this JDVD custom pinstripe. This knife is sick. Now, anybody who follows the channel knows that there was a little 3-minute video that I took of this knife and put up on the channel a little while ago just from my front yard as I was on the way to drop it off in the mail. This knife is on loan to us from my friend Mike. The last time I had it, something went down with his living situation and he needed the knife back, so I had to send it back sort of right after I got it, but I was able to nab it from him once again from New York Custom Knife Show. So I am absolutely delighted to be able to give you guys a full overview of this knife. It's absolutely fantastic. JD himself often refers to this knife as his favorite pinstripe of all time, and that is for good reason. So let's go ahead, before we check out the features and flaws, jump into some of the statistics of this knife. First up being the overall length. Okay, so this knife is meant to be a little bit more of a gentleman's folder, something that you can tuck away in your pocket, and at only 7 inches, it comes in at a completely reasonable overall length. Let's check those 7 inches out up against a couple of comparison knives, such as the Paramilitary 2, which you can see makes the pinstripe sort of a tiny little toothpick in comparison. So let's check out something a little bit more in the same playing field, the Rat 2. Now you can see the pinstripe is even dwarfed by the Rat 2 in many respects. So the Rat 2 is actually just a little bit taller. Yeah, even at the fattest section, the hindquarters of the pinstripe, the largest sections on the Rat 2 are thicker. We do have taller. We do have a taller blade as well, in addition to, well, let's see. Is it a longer blade as well? It has a shorter cutting edge and kind of a shorter blade. So the Rat 2 is larger in terms of handle, but actually more shallow in terms of the overall length on the blade there. And you do get, looks to me like, a little bit more cutting edge out of the pinstripe as well. So clearly JD has packed more useful blade length into his handle than Ontario did, although you do lose some of that belly in terms of going with a shorter, in terms of tallness, blade on the pinstripe. So let's get these knives out of here and check out the weight on this super small gentleman's folder. Okay, dokay. Now, if I had to guess, I would say this knife's going to be like 2.5 to 3 ounces. Well, 2.5 ounces. Let's see how well I did. Ooh, feels good, man. Feels good. I've been really bad about guessing weights on the channel, and so the more I improve, the more excited I get about myself, I guess. I don't know. But at 2.29 ounces, you can see this Silver Strike carbon fiber is doing its job, as is this G10 backspacer, really bringing that weight down. This is a completely reasonable tuck-away folder. It does have a clip on it, of course. JD would build you one without a clip, probably, if you asked. I'm not 100% sure. Please don't quote me on that, and please don't hold him to the fire if he tells you no. But you could really just slip this in a jacket pocket and no one would be the wiser. Let's get this scale out of here and jump into the features and flaws. Okay, guys, so the first thing that we want to do is, of course, just take a look at some of the materials and finishing work done on this knife, get some nice close-ups. We'll do a little showcase. So you can see here, and I mentioned this the first time I uploaded this video, or sorry, the video on this knife. My favorite thing about it is this incredibly tight Damasteel etch. Now, of course, JD's etching ability is to thank for the execution, but we have Damasteel Lab, of course, to thank for making such a tight pattern in the first place. But the two of them combined are a force to be reckoned with. Just take a look. I mean, the high polish behind the etch and everything just the camera, I don't even think, is doing this knife justice. It comes to life, guys. It really comes to life. It's just impeccable. It's probably my single favorite. Probably my single favorite, most favorite Damasteel etch I've ever come across on any knife. It is just magnificent. I mean, really, I don't think you. I'm talking to you as if you're rolling your eyes at me, even though you're probably not. But I mean, just the tightness of some of these lines. It is next level. Of course, the next most important feature is going to, of course, be these Damasteel pivot collars. I know JD's proud of those. I know that Mike, the owner, of course, if I didn't mention earlier, this knife is on loan from Mike. I know that that's one of his favorite. Oh, I've completely drifted off camera. I'm sorry. I know that's also one of his favorite parts about the knife. I like that they're thicker. A lot of time pivot collars get really, really thin. And so when they're made out of these cool exotic materials, you have to like look really close to see it. You know, it doesn't really become a feature of the knife as much as it becomes kind of like a nice touch for somebody that gets to hold the knife. JD has been doing a great job with really showing off with his pivot collars. So these are relatively thick for the size of the overall knife. And if you guys have seen the gold prototype that he had at New York Custom Knife Show, huge Timascus pivot collars around the pivot on that prototype gold. I actually asked for something similar on my custom build. And then we need to talk about these jeweled liners. Let me get this flashlight out here. Because, as I mentioned, you guys may have seen the Steve Skiff video before this one. I'm not sure the order I published them in, but jeweling your internal titanium liners is such a win for me, in the same way that doing anything to the interior of a knife is a win for me. When a knife maker takes the time to make the inside of their knife as pretty as the outside of their knife, that has to be respected, and that has value. Whether that's a production knife like a Shirogorov, where the internal milling is just done in a pattern that's absolutely gorgeous, whether it's something like a Grimsmo, where the milled pockets have milled patterns in them. There's all kinds of good examples of ways to do that. Or, of course, if you just have hand-finished titanium liners like you do on a knife like this, just jeweling the inside is a completely reasonable way to make me happy. But I'll try to show that off to you guys. I don't ever really do a good job. I think this light is turned all the way down. Yeah. Sorry, that's my lowest setting. But I just kind of want to prove it to you guys. You know what jeweling looks like. So definitely something that I'm very, very happy with on the interior of this knife. Now, we do have a pretty basic G10 backspacer. I could have gone for this Silver Strike Lightning carbon fiber to be in there too. Everybody else agree? I mean, the whole knife is black and silver, right? The blade with Damasteel, black and silver. Pivot, black and silver. Carbon fiber, black and silver. Hardware, you could even say, silver screws, black backspacer. But if this backspacer had been Silver Strike carbon fiber, I think that was the one little touch this knife needed. Although, you guys tell me down in the comments what you think, because of course everything I just said is personal preference, and maybe having the solid black here kind of helps bring the knife more down to earth. You guys tell me what you think in the comments below. So that pretty much does it for just kind of the general showcase. Of course, we have that super tight Damasteel etch on the clip as well. And so let's go ahead and jump into, nice little segue, the clip itself. So the clip, it's solid at its job. It does require two hands, at least in the pocket, because you can see the ramp here is kind of just a nub. It's pretty shallow. And it's kind of short. And so, you know, if the seam on your pants is even a little bit thick, you'll need to hold the material of the pocket as you push it past. But overall, it's got good retention and length. And something else to point out is that the placement of the clip being right up against the back here, I'm sure some of you noticed that right away. It's kind of unconventional. It means that as long as you're putting the knife in your pocket in a normal way, the whole knife should kind of tuck away into the rear crevice of your pocket. So if you imagine, if my hand is the inside of your pocket, so this is the seam of your pants where, you know, a knife gets clipped on. So this is me putting my knife in my pocket. The clip goes over the seam, and then, you know, the pocket has sort of the end here, and it would do the same thing on this side. So I don't know about you guys, but I always clip my knife as far back into the pocket as possible. That way you can reach past it, and it doesn't look silly kind of sitting out in the middle of your pocket. So if you do that with this knife, what you'll see is, because of your sort of natural inclination to push the clip as far back as you can, you'll clip the knife in, and you'll get it back here, and because it's pushed back as far as you can get it, that will push the rest of the knife nice and deep into the crevice of the pocket. So it just does a really good job of making sure that this knife is really, really out of the way, so that you can have kind of full ability to reach into your pocket and get past the knife. Now, you might catch your pinky on the flipper tab here, but outside of that, you know, it's going to be really, really tucked away. And of course, this will go great in a suit pocket as well. But I just wanted to kind of point out what it means to have the clip pushed all the way up against the edge here. And on such a small knife like this that's meant to be tucked away, it actually functions very well. So let's jump into the next section, which is going to be the action. And that's, of course, broken into two different sections, the deployment and the closing. First up is the deployment, and I have to say the deployment on this knife is the best feature that it has. You really would have to try hard to get this knife to fail. You can do the thumb mash, where you mash your thumb up against the back, and that fails deployment, but I don't think that I've yet been able to use my index finger and fail deployment on this knife. So even if you get the meat of your finger up here and mash it down, on any other knife, even something spectacular like a Thorburn, if I get the meat of my finger and I just kind of mash, you'll see it won't break. And that's just because physics. And normally that's true of every knife. I'm pretty sure I could pick up any knife here and mash it, and I won't get deployment. But this knife, I mash it, and it's the same deployment that I get if I'm just flipping the knife normally. So definitely the strongest feature of this knife is deployment. I cannot get over how snappy it is. We're really talking about borderline out the front speed in terms of how fast this blade deploys. The D10 is incredibly strong. The jimping is incredibly catchy. It's very, you can see, it's sharp, but it's shallow. What that means is it's shallow enough that if you rub it, like this doesn't feel like hell, but it's sharp enough that if you're actually trying to flip the knife, and therefore you bury the jimping into your finger, it's super grippy. You cannot slip off of this flipper tab. I have very sweaty hands. I'm under 3 giant lights that are beaming down on me right now, and I don't have a fan on, and so my hands are pretty slippery right now, and I cannot slip off of this flipper tab. I can't stress enough, guys, that it makes this knife just so incredible. It's just really one of the best deployments that I've experienced. It's not super loud, you know, it's a pretty small, light blade, so it's not like swinging out with this crazy authoritative, you know, crack or anything. But it's just that really solid, you know, you pull this thing out of your pocket and you're like, bam, cut, 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 and put it away. Bam! Like, it just, wow, it's just a really special deployment. It absolutely rockets out. Now, having said that, there's always a trade-off, and the closing on this knife is kind of hindered because of it. The lock bar strength on this knife is not too overly tuned, but the detent is pretty big and pretty bulbous. You can see here. So with such a small blade, you just don't really have the weight to pull against that tension. Now, you can see here, I'm not shaking very hard, and it still moves. It's not completely stuck or frozen in time the way it could be. But you would need a pretty solid shake to get this thing to close all the way. And you can. I mean, look, it's incredibly smooth. It's, of course, running on IKBS. You can slam it shut, and it's really not difficult. This is how I would close the knife if I owned it. You know, I would just, bam. But it is important to know that we are nowhere near sort of free fall drop shuttiness. So while incredibly smooth, that super strong deployment is going to be compensated for with a less free drop shut, quote unquote, action. Now, let's talk about the blade. We are, of course, looking at Damasteel. That is going to be the steel type. And I think you'd be hard-pressed to question this blade design. Not only are these grinds drop-dead gorgeous, and again, I know we did a showcase at the beginning, but just really look at how this swedge starts all the way back here. All the way back towards the plunge grind and just slowly develops all along this super thin flat. And then you can see the flat gets super thin and disappears to where the swedge is making contact with the primary bevel. And you can see the curvature of the swedge sort of changes right here. It's kind of bulbous right here. So it kind of comes out and arcs back in. And that gives a very subtle look to the blade that just gives it a little bit extra added character. This swedge is incredible. I'm going to try to give you a better angle. See it right there. Look at that curvature. That's so subtle, but when you see it, it's so obvious how beautiful it is. Just a really impeccable job. We are looking at a hollow grind along this Damasteel etch. And if you, of course, had this beautiful Damasteel etch, you're probably not going to do too much cutting. But let's assume you bought one with a regular sort of hand rub satin finish. This is going to make a great slicer. Now, it must be said that the blade overall might be a bit too short in terms of length to get through some of the otherworldly sized apples that we have here in America. I'm sure if you're an American, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You go to the grocery store and you see these apples that are the size of gourds, right? And they're huge, and because they're so full of crap or whatever that, you know, we made them huge. So this won't function with maybe your average grocery store apple, but it is going to be generally great to have around for a piece of fruit or something. This is definitely a knife, definitely a blade that I could see myself getting a lot of use out of. Going to be great for quickly opening packages with pinch grip. And you know, it's just super wieldy. It's super easy to use. It feels super comfortable. It's not really super tall, so I don't feel like if I kind of press it into something that it's gonna, you know, go deep into a box and start cutting items on the inside and everything. Overall, just a really, really solid blade. So that's pretty much it for this one, guys. I hope you enjoyed. You know, I'm really, really glad that I got to get this knife back and give you guys a full overview of it. It's absolutely impeccable. There's a reason that this one in particular, with all of this gorgeous Damasteel, remains JD's favorite. But it's important to note that you can get this knife in basically any configuration you can possibly think of. JD makes them with bolsters, without bolsters. You can, you know, get different blade steels. And he just finished up a batch of pinstripes, I believe. So if you are interested in one of these, definitely hit him up on Instagram at JDVD Knives, I believe. I'll correct myself if I was wrong. But yeah, I mean, you can get one designed however you want. So if you just want like a nice little gentleman's flipper that has really, really solid deployment that you can kind of tuck away, maybe take to a wedding or something where your large Thorburn L36M might not be as politely received, this is going to be a great option for you. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Of course, if you'd like to see beautiful pictures of this knife or all of these other knives, you can do so by following me on Instagram at tovarishworks. And if you'd like to reach out to me for any reason whatsoever, you can do so by emailing me at tovarishworks@gmail.com. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and I will see you next time.